Okay, so for this example, I'm going to talk about how to make things in Poly. So you can have the right reflections you want, and you can have the control that you want. First thing I'm going to talk about, a thing I like to call railroad tracks. At least this is how I was described about this sort of idea of modeling in my alias class when I was at Art Center. So taking a look here, going to add a plane, going to rotate it 90 degrees. Right now, I'm just speeding through this. You don't necessarily need to follow along here. Just kind of walking you through the basic properties of all this. Okay. So if I wanted to follow this curve right here, I would do a couple things. So grab this line, press E. So I'd find the midpoint of the curve. I'll find the midpoint down here. And then I want to find the end point for this curve. Find where it ends right here. So you got it beginning, middle, end. Beginning, middle, end. And this will allow you to have a curve that goes through. Now, if we want to really see this, I got to add modifier, subdivide, go to, and I'm going to extend this through here. Bam. Extend it through here, and you see the beginning of the curve there. Beginning of the curve there. Press E. Bring this out. Bring this out. E again. Out. And then I'm extruding all the way across here. It looks like this line changes there. Okay. And you can see that there is, how this curve is accelerating through all the way this way. I don't want it to really do that. So I'm going to add some curves at the end here, just so that way it goes straight through here. I'm going to do the same thing here, same thing here. Cool. Next, you can see how there's, a bit of a bevel to this. So if I press Control R, click, Control R, click, and if I just grab all these, extend it out, you can see very quickly, if I move this out of the way, get rid of this right here, we've got that shape. Perfect. And then right here, we can fill this in here as well. And that's just pressing F. So some basic rules of thumb. Whenever making a curve, have a beginning, middle, and an end point. Or, sometimes you maybe need more, sometimes less, but, usually about a few works good. That way you can control where things are starting and ending and the acceleration of the curve. Next, like you saw I did right there, generally speaking, you want all your polys to have 4 vertices. So you want to make everything into a square. Now, you can have a 5-sided shape or a 3-sided shape or however many sided shapes, but if you do that, you're going to start to run into some issues. So let's say I go through here and I decide I want to dissolve this edge. And you know what? It's not super apparent here. Let's change this up. Part of it, okay, you can see a little bit of an issue. Now, for the most part, it's fairly flat up here, so it's kind of hard to tell what the difference is. Let's make it a bit more obvious. I'm going to build another plane. Okay. Gonna get rid of this, don't need it anymore, don't need this. Cool. And we're gonna add the subdivision surface. Right click smooth. Great. Okay. So I'm gonna duplicate this just so we can kind of see what the difference is. Now let's get rid of this. Let's make this a 5-sided shape. So if I get rid of this edge, dissolve edge. Now here, it does it fairly well. You got a little bit of choppiness right here. But Blender's gonna kind of try and do some things to figure it out to make it work. But 5 sides, that's kind of okay. Depends on the surface, and sometimes you can't really avoid it. Let's try doing something where it's a 3-sided surface. That's going to be a little bit more messed up. Now, right here, you got all this wrinkling, and it's kind of not sure what to do because there's 3 sides. So let's dissolve this. And let's take that same point that was right here. We go to a 4. And because it's going from a 4 to a 5, it's getting a little messed up in the process. But if we go 4 all the way through, it keeps it clean. So do your best. Try and get 4-sided shapes. Definitely keeps things clean. Alias kind of the same way. You're trying to do everything in squares. Now, next, let's talk about maybe how you want to do some intersections. So I'm going to get rid of this. Let's say I have 2 shapes. And I want them to intersect. I'm going to say they're a little bit different. But for ease of use, I'm going to keep the vertices where they are right now. I'm just going to have them come up like that. Now, if you want to have these 2 forms come together, one thing you can do, I like to get this knife tool. I'm cutting where this section is right here. Going to delete this. I'm going to do the same thing for this bottom one. Going to follow this here as well. Perfect. Now, they are 2 different shapes. So you can see one is, or separate objects anyway. One is this yellow color, and then this other one is orange. So if I do Control J, they're now combined. And if I click on 4 vertices, and if I press F, that fills in the gap. I press F again, and now they are combined. So what this means right here, if we go into X-ray mode, you can think of this as you have 2 globals. So these are 2 large sections. So if I click on all these vertices, this would be one section. This would be another section. And then in between here, this would be referred to as a fillet. So this combines the 2 forms together. And you see this all over on cars. There's lots of globals that meet each other and fillets that connect between. And then from here, we can adjust the fillet. So let's say, for example, I want to have them connected. If I go back, let's see, I can combine them. And again, this is by doing merge vertices. There's other ways to do this, but we'll go through it. But then if I do Control B, for example, I can bring this fillet back out again. So Control B. And the bigger I make it, the softer the intersection. I can even add another section right here if I wanted to tighten it up by scrolling on the mouse wheel forward or back. So I can add a lot or a little. Usually I'll just keep it either as 2, or if I want a much tighter crease, maybe I'll do 3 sections, and I find that that's more than enough. And usually for poly, you want to keep things as simple as possible. The less polys you have, the cleaner the surface usually, and the less work down the line if you're pushing and pulling some things. Sometimes it helps to rebuild a surface again if things aren't going right, rather than pushing and pulling things into oblivion. So now we got the section. You can see how those two are now connected, which, this could easily be, let me grab this over here. This could definitely simulate, some section that's running into a grill or whatever else. But you got this nice section that runs through here, really clean. And that's exactly what we're looking for, so we can get the right highlights going. So you can see, beautiful, perfect highlights. All right, so we talked about railroad tracks, we talked about squares, talked about the difference between polys having 4, 5, 3 sides, whatever else. These are the basic building blocks for what you need when doing poly.